Is there a question and answer? Would anyone like to ask a question? But you'd have to speak up because I'm...
Yes, how long did it take you to do that extraordinary shot in the Aldwych tube station?
We set it up on a Sunday morning, and we shot it in the afternoon. We could only afford to be in the underground for a day. That's all we could afford, because that particular tube station is used for exercise with the fire brigade and the army and the police. So we could only afford one day. And we weren't allowed to use the elevators because they were too old and they wouldn't allow us to use it. We were not allowed to have any food at all down there. We could only have water. And it was very restrictive, but we did it in a day.
How many takes of that did you only do one take?
Gosh, I can't actually remember the number of takes. It did seem to take an awful long time to do it because we were mounted on the original railways tracks, and they're not smooth. They really are not smooth. And this is what's wonderful about digital, is the fact that they took all the bumps out. Quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary. They took all the bumps out. But when you're on a restricted budget, you have to know what all the shots are. And I've always made films with a very little amount of money, but I write everything into the script. Every shot, every pan, every track, whether it's moving to left to right, right to left, every bit of music. Because then I go to the set knowing every shot. And that is not as restrictive as it sounds. Because once you're on the floor with the actors, and you say, well, we'll run through this scene, and the positions are here, here, and here, then you do it. And if something goes wrong, it's not right, you can then think, well, what's the meaning of the scene? And once you know what the meaning of the scene is, you know where to put the camera. I only had one sort of wobble throughout the film. When Hester goes into Mrs. Elton's flat, what it was originally written as was Mr. Elton fell out of bed, and they were to get him back into bed. And it just didn't work. I mean, I could not find a frame. I thought, oh God, what will we do? I sent the actors away. So me, the producer, the cinematographer, and the script supervisor sat there in this deathly silence. And Susanna, who was the script supervisor, said the most wonderful thing to me, which I'll never, ever, ever forget, is the action true? As soon as she said it, I knew the action was not true, that really Mrs. Elton should be there, Mr. Elton should be in the bed, and Hester goes in half to help, half curious. And that makes it much more powerful. Things like that. It's the big things that happen. I mean, the camera broke down twice, and everyone was getting really wild panic. And I said, look, I know where the shots are. We'll make them up. Even though we've got a very tight schedule, we'll make them up. And we did. Anything can go wrong on a film, and I never get fazed, except if somebody is rude. I want to go home. As soon as they do it, I think, I'm sorry, it's killing the magic. It's like saying the moon's made of paper. And I can't forgive it. I just say, fine, if you're going to destroy the magic, let's all go home. That's the one thing I just cannot cope with it. But luckily I didn't have this on this film. I've had it on other films, yes. And it is unbelievably dispiriting, because you just think, suddenly you just see all these people, all this crew, all this cast, and you think, what are we here for? What's the point? And that is horrible when that happens. It's really, really horrible. And whoever does it, I have them killed.
Hi, I'm not familiar with the Radigan's play, so roughly how much of what we're seeing is from the play exactly, or pretty much from the play, and how much did you change?
Oh God, no. I mean, when I was asked, did I want to do a play for the centenary, I said, well, I can't do separate tables, because it was made in the 50s by Burt Lancaster, and it's really, really good. I said, I couldn't compete with that, and there's no point in remaking a really good film. And Browning version was made in 52 with a wonderful performance by Michael Redgrave. And I said, I can't do that either. I said, well, what I'll do, I'll read the entire canon. So I read the entire canon. I thought, I think I can do something with The Deep Blue Sea. And they said, fine, do it. And be radical. The Rattigan Trust were really, really wonderful. Because the problem with the play is that the whole of the first act is exposition. Mrs. Elton telling you what happened before the curtain rose. If you can show that, then all that exposition can go. And I said, I want to shoot it from Hester's point of view, which of course I've gotten rid of all that very tedious exposition where you're told everything and you don't believe it. And clearly, you know, Britain was really very, very bad in the 50s, and clearly Mr. Rattigan never lived in a bedsit in Ladbroke Grove. That was very clear from the way it was that particular part was written. So I got rid of a lot of that, cut down the supporting characters, so that I felt that they were then true. Once it's done from a particular point of view, then any scenes in which she is not there can't be in because she's not privy to them. And that is very, very helpful, which meant that how do we tell the story? And if it's from Hester's point of view, it's much more interesting to see her try to kill herself. And then what would she remember as she's just going under semi-consciousness on of the gas? She'd remember how she got there. And if you show two men and a woman, there has to be a relationship between them, you know, and all the film does is explain that relationship. It's dead simple, you know, it's really as simple as the simplest storytelling of all. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there were two children, and their names were, you all want to know what their names were, don't you? Hansel and Gretel. It's such a simple device. It couldn't be simpler. And if I can think of it, anybody can.
I think you spoke about exposition and how to convey that as the viewer. I think you did a brilliant way of achieving that through the music. That certainly got me really involved in Hester's character and her mindset. How much music did you listen to choose the proper music to achieve that exposition?
Well, actually very little. I've known the Barber Violin Concerto for many years, and I love it. I think it's one of the great violin concertos of the 20th century, and you're very lucky. He's one of your countrymen, and you should be very proud of him, along with Knoxville. Those are his two masterpieces. But I knew I'd always loved it. And when you love something, it's sort of there at the back of your mind somewhere. And when I was writing it, I just thought, it's got to be the Barber. It's got to be the Barber. And to use it quite boldly, like Rachmaninoff is used in Brief Encounter, it's very bold, the use of it. And I just love that slow movement, because it's full of yearning, full of love. But it has the most yearning quality to it. And it's a great tune. It's a really great tune. And I was worried about clearing it, because obviously, you know, it's still in copyright, and we'd have to clear the work just on its own. And at some point someone said, well, we'll record the second movement. And I said, I really don't want to do that, you know, because there are two wonderful versions. One that was on radio, BBC Radio, and the woman's name I cannot remember, but the articulation was just superb, as well as the playing. And then I heard the Hilary Hahn version, and it is ravishing. I mean, that playing is ravishing. And what's wonderful about it, it's got this, because the concerto itself was written in 1947. It's got that yearning that you get if you watch those films of the 40s, or the big tunes, you know, by Miklos Rozsa, you know, Max Steiner, all those, they always have a big tune that's got this kind of ache in it. And that's what it reminded me of, those films, which of course those films were enormous importance to me. The Joe Stafford, for instance, I'd always loved. on Sundays, when I was growing up in the 50s, the BBC Live programme had a request programme called 2-Way Family Favourites. And it was for all the military who were still stationed around the world, like Akrotiri and Berlin and all that. And people who were at home requested records. That's all it was. My mum and I came back from church one morning. She switched on the radio for the live programme, and it was 2-Way Family Favourites. And it was a lovely summer morning. And one of the requests was, "You Belong to Me," and I walked out into the street, and every house door was open, and they were all listening to Joe Stafford. You cannot forget that. It's so powerful. Music is powerful. I mean, it really, very often, actually makes the film better than it is. The best example, I think, is the wonderful score that Jerome Ross wrote for The Big Country, which is not a particularly good film, but what a great score. But the greatest score of all is Bernard Herrmann's for Psycho. That is so fabulous. They'll be playing that in concert halls soon, they really will. Written entirely for string orchestra, nothing else. And the bit with when Arbogast goes into the house, and you just hear on the strings shimmer with their mutes on. Oh!